for as long as human beings have existed. People of all civilizations, all eras, and really all around the world ask questions like, why are we here? How were we created? Where did the earth come from? What's our role in this world? And it's not just little kids that ask these questions. These are deep ponderings within most of us. And so in response to our questions, our tradition gives us two creation stories to explain the world and our place in it. Two stories not because earth and humanity and all of creation was created twice, but because there's so much to explain. And these stories, they help us understand our world. They help us understand our place in it. Just a few weeks ago, we looked at the Adam and Eve creation story in Genesis 2. We talked about how they were created for relationship with one another, how we're made for community, how we're bound together. Today, we're looking at Genesis chapter 1. And I've always seen this creation story as that detailed yet poetic story of creation, with its day by day by day rhythm, where God said, "Let there be," and then it was. And then God ended each day saying that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning on the blank day. Because in the beginning, there was darkness and a formless void, and out of that chaos, God conjured light, forming day and night, separating the waters from the sky, bringing forth vegetation and all living creatures. God created. God created earth and sea and every living creature. And God explains that God created for us. God states, "I've given you every plant yielding seed, every tree, every beast of life, every bird of the air, everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life." It was all given to us. It was all created for us. The earth and its inhabitants are ours. What a gift. It sure makes those earrings or the new grill we received as last year's birthday gift look like nothing. Genesis 1, it details how God and God's creation are bound together in a distinctive and delicate way. God and God's creation are bound together by the powerful, gracious movement of God towards creation. That binding which is established by God is irreversible. God decided it, and it can't be nullified. This is the basis for everything that follows in the Bible. And if that's so, then there's more to creation than the story that we were taught in children's Sunday school. There's depth, and more importantly, there's a solid foundation for this world and our place within it. God created the entire world in creative acts that mainly centered around God's speech. Yet God only speaks directly to human creatures. God explains, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over all living things that move upon the earth." Twice in this passage, God pronounces humankind's dominion over the earth. The vegetation and the creatures, dominion, power. For us, that's kind of appealing. In addition to that power, We're the only creatures made in God's image. We're given dominion over the earth and the creatures in it. And at first glance, we hear of our dominion over the earth and we puff up, our chest swells, and we think of the power that our hands can yield. We view ourselves as little gods running around, ruling our little kingdoms, even though we know that ultimate rule, governance, and dominion of humanity and all creation belongs to God. And so when we see ourselves as little gods, we abuse God's creation, like Pharaoh's exploitation of the land and of the Israelites. We fill landfills with trash that could have been recycled. We waste our leftover food while others go hungry. We've allowed farmland to be ravaged until this fruitful creation suffers death at the hands of overuse. We forfeit our ability to reuse items simply for the sake of convenience. We're all guilty. We focus on ourselves instead of viewing this world as a communal gift from God. Our rugged individualism sometimes clouds that understanding of the dominion that we're granted. The word dominion in the Bible, it comes from the Hebrew, Aramaic, or Greek words for control, mastery, or sovereignty. And in the creation account, two different Hebrew words for dominion are used. Radha is used when God sets humankind over the animals, and kavash is used when humankind are granted dominion over the earth. Both of these terms can be used to convey violent or even abusive uses of power. But in the context and the orderliness of Genesis 1, it seems to point against those connotations and toward something else. When we look at other passages using these words of dominion, we come to better understand what God meant when God granted humankind dominion over the earth and the plants and creatures. Leviticus 25:17 instructs us, "You shall not rule or have dominion over another with fierceness, but shall fear the Lord." Psalm 72 says, "Let him," meaning the earthly king, "have dominion over the land, because he delivers the poor, saves the lives of the needy, redeems their lives." To have dominion is to have responsibility. Responsibility to help those who have no helper. Responsibility to those entrusted to our care. Providence belongs first and foremost to God, but God grants us dominion over all the earth so that we can use earth and all the animals to sustain the life of all creatures, of all beings. When we talk about dominion, it can be helpful to think of it in this way, that as God's image bearers in the world, we're intended to act as God's representatives. We're designed in a very real way to show the world what God is like. And so when God gave us the command to rule over the earth, the expectation was to do so in a way that reflected God's character. It's kind of like when my sister asks a babysitter to watch her kids. She doesn't say, "Go to town and run amok, do whatever you want." She expects the babysitter to maintain the rules the family has in place. The babysitter's to act as a representative, albeit in limited sense, of my sister and her husband. Our dominion is a little like that, although on a much grander scale. We're created to be custodians of the earth. We've been given dominion, but it comes with a fair share of responsibility. God calls us into community. The creation story, it begins with the relationship with the land, but it extends throughout all of the Bible to include all creatures and all of humanity. We find examples of love of neighbor all throughout the Gospels, but it's also in our Old Testament as well. There's the year of Jubilee described in Leviticus, where they freed those who'd fallen into slavery, returned lost land to its original owners, so that excessive wealth wasn't built up and injustices were righted. Likewise, in Deuteronomy 15, the Sabbath year is explained. Every 7 years, there was a Sabbath year, a year of rest, during which the Israelites were not supposed to sow or reap the land, but allow it to be renewed. How can we make room in our lives? How can we rework our understanding of our dominion over the earth, over the creatures, and most importantly, over others? We are not little gods. And although we know this, our actions and the way we rule our lives sometimes suggest otherwise. We are subject to the God who has gifted us with this wonderful creation, the freedom to respect it and sustain ourselves within it. We are not simply our brother's keeper, but we are the earth's keeper. The land we walk on, the animals that reside in it, the people who care for it and live in it. With power and dominion comes responsibility. So how will we respond? Amen.